Hello, this is Kimmy from Notary Life with Kimmy. Well, hey, you guys, today we are talking about common mistakes people are making, aka notaries, when it comes to processing apostilles. There are quite a few, so I want you to stick with me, okay? So the first one is the notary that signed the document, because don't forget, you may not always be the notary that's processing or signing the document. You might just be facilitating the apostille. Someone else could have notarized the documents. But the first mistake is that the original notary who notarized the documents did it incorrectly. You facilitate it and you send it down to your Secretary of State or whoever processes them in your state, and guess what? It's incorrect. If you had known how to properly notarize documents, that would not have happened. So now you're facilitating it. You've cost the client money and time because the Secretary of State is going to double check the notarization, and if it's incorrect, they're going to send it back to you. Okay? So you need to know how to notarize first. You do not have to be a notary in order to process apostilles. Let me be clear. You do not. However, you do need to know basic notarial rules and laws if you're going to facilitate. And if you are a notary, how much more so do you need to know if the notarization from the first notary is correct? Because people are spending hundreds of dollars. We're talking about, oh, you got to pay me $185. You got to pay me $200, $300, and then it's not processed correctly. Your client is going to be upset. So if you do not know how to properly notarize a document yourself, then you may need some training. So you can check us out at notaryeducatorsllc.com. Okay. Number 2 is not charging enough for the shipping. So as the facilitator of the apostille, if you don't charge enough, then you're going to end up going into your pocket. That is a common mistake. For example, it costs $50 to send a package from here, Georgia, to California. This is just a rough estimate, guys. Don't quote me. I charged the client $30. So I have neglected to include $50 going there, $50 coming back. So that's $100. Who's going to pay that? Me as the notary? No, the client needs to pay that. So you might have to tell the client, instead of trying to price it right away, hey, let me get back with you because I have to do a little homework and confirm what my shipping fees will be. What if it's more than one destination? One document needs to go to Florida, one needs to go to California. So now you might have $200 just in shipping fees, but you have not charged your client enough. So it's impossible to have a flat rate on apostilles. That's why pricing is so tricky. People often say, well, Kimmy, how much do I charge for my apostille? I hear $300, $400. You must know your math. You must know the destination of where the document is going. What if it's going overseas, out the country? So now you have that fee too. Have you included that in your pricing? If not, you're going to be upset because you're going to be short. You thought you were charging the client $400. Woo, I'm making money, right? But you haven't priced the job correctly. It might be $200 worth of fees for shipping, okay? So double check your shipping fees. Number 3, and this is not in any kind of order, and I might not keep the number, okay? But I am on number 3 right now. Not keeping the client informed of the process. If you told your client it's going to take 5 to 12 weeks, and you've taken their $400 or $500 or $300, whatever you charge, and you have not contacted the client, and just let them know, just a heads up, hey, I'm still checking on it, I'm still working on it. They may be like, wow, she got all my money and she can't even give me a phone call. That's just good customer service. Some of these apostilles, if it's going out the country, if it's a federal one, it may take longer to process. So you must have good communication with your client. That is a must. So work on what kind of system you want to have. It's something called a client relation management, I believe, tool. And that's just entering the data of the customer when they dropped it off. When is it supposed to be ready? What's the customer's phone number? Okay, you might want an intake sheet. And that could be your way of keeping up with the client. Make sure they know that you're not responsible in case the document is lost, stolen, or not even delivered. You did it FedEx, so now FedEx lost your package. That actually happened to Alexis, our other trainer, and she had to get the document redone. So it wasn't her fault. But the client needs to know that you're not accepting responsibility if the package is lost or stolen. So you might want to actually have them sign a waiver. Okay, I'm actually going to create one for myself. I have not created that yet, but I am in the process. I'm going to, because I need them to know, hey, if FedEx loses your package, that's not on me. You still owe me my money because I helped with the processing, and we still may have to redo it. And then, of course, you're not going to charge your client again to redo it, right? Right? We're not going to recharge them. Okay, so let's go on to another one. You have to inform the client that they cannot separate the document once it's been apostilled. A lot of times notaries do not inform. They may not even know themselves. They may not even know. But once the document has been apostilled by the Secretary of State, if the client pulls it apart, that document is no longer valid. So if they pull the document apart and they paid you $300, then that's just $300. You're going to have to get it redone. I don't know what that fee looks like if you want to recharge them for processing, for mailing, or whatever. But as a notary, you should know that once the document has been apostilled, they cannot pull it apart. Each state has a different way of putting it together. So they'll put your document that's been apostilled with the apostille on top, the document. So it's 2 pages, let's just say. So once they staple it, crimp it, in my state, they use a little gold seal. Whatever they do to put it together, once the Secretary of State has looked at it, if the client pulls it apart, it's no good. So you need to know that as the professional so you can let your client know. Don't pull it apart. It may be additional fees, okay? So let's move on. Sending photocopies. You cannot send a photocopy. A lot of times it must be the original document that needs to be apostilled. So that I'm gonna push back a little bit, because sometimes it may be a photocopy of a driver's license or a passport, but most of the time you're gonna need original documents. So what does that mean? That means that you're gonna let your client know, hey, you want to get an original. So if they give you the birth certificate, you cannot use a copy of a birth certificate. So I know, as the apostille expert that you are, right? The apostille expert that you are, you already know that you cannot apostille a birth certificate, right? However, that being said, if your client has a birth certificate, right, you cannot apostille their only birth certificate. Now they're left with anything, because remember, once the state or government apostilles it and they put it together with the seal, they can't pull it apart. So now they don't have a birth certificate. So you need to advise the client that you need to order an original birth certificate, an original death certificate, or whatever it may be that it needs to be an original. And most of the time they can get that from vitalcheck.com. Okay. Also, sending to the wrong Secretary or State or to the embassy. You need to know where the document needs to go. You cannot just take an apostille and say, okay, this needs to go to the Secretary of State, and you send it there. It may not need to go to the Secretary of State. It may need to go directly to DC for processing. Okay, or Virginia. It starts in Virginia, then goes to DC. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not getting into training here. I'm just letting you know common errors that are happening with people in their apostille. So everybody's jumping on the apostille bandwagon. Oh, I'm making $300, $400, $500,000, right? But you have to know what you're doing. People are having errors out there when it comes to apostilles, and you do not want to be that notary. It's going to cost you in your business, where you might have to end up refunding money. And who wants to do that? I know I do not, right? So you want to make sure you know your processes. So let's get back to the one I was just talking about. So you don't just willy-nilly say, okay, I have this document, I'm going to send it to the Secretary of State. No, you need to know the process. Where does it need to go? Send it to the right processing branch of government. Does it go to the Secretary of State? Does it go to Virginia? Does it go to the embassy? Where does it go? You need to know that. Don't just willy-nilly start sending off documents, because again, you're going to cost yourself money as well as your client, and we do not want to do that, okay? Also, another common error is using a notary certification that has been expired. So this is going to be a couple things. One, if your notary stamp is expired, you cannot use it. You cannot say, oh, well, the government is going to put a higher level of authentication on top of it anyway, so mine doesn't matter. Wrong answer. Your notary stamp must be current if you're the notary that's stamping the original document, right? If the other notary has stamped the document, you want to still check the date of that person's notary stamp. Because if it's expiring within a couple weeks or a couple months, you may not want to send that document for processing, and then it has to go to another country. By the time it gets over to the other country, the notary stamp date has expired. Let me give you an example in case that wasn't clear. So the notary stamped the document with her stamp January 31st, but her document or the document of the client is going to another country. They mailed it on January 15th. If it takes 3 weeks to get to the other country, that puts the document arriving in February, correct? So that means by the time it arrives in the other country, the notary stamp is expired. It's no good. So you have to go above and beyond and make sure that you know that your stamp is valid. At least 6 months is what we like to say, those of us that process these a lot, or the other notary stamp is still going to be good within a 6-month time frame, because we don't know how long it's going to take for processing. Say the client holds onto the document for another couple months before they actually send it out. So let's give a little leeway there. So the notary stamp must be valid. Okay. Another point, it's a lot of them, guys, so stick with me. If you really want to learn apostilles and process these, you need to watch this to the end. It's just real talk. You might have to come back and watch it a couple times, because it's a lot when it comes to processing apostilles. Everybody wants the money, as I stated earlier, but you want to do it and do it correctly, okay? Using the wrong shipping label. Some states are very specific. You may not be able to use FedEx with every single state. That is my preferred method, but if the state says that I can't use it, that I'm sending a document to, then I have to use something else. It might be the Postal Service. It might be UPS. You have to read the instructions. You cannot assume that all states' processes are the same, because they are not. Some, again, only want to use this shipping company. Some will use others. And if you send it to the wrong one, they're going to put it either in the trash, probably not, but they're going to send it back to you. It's going to be what's called rejected. And you do not want a rejection. So that just means they're going to stamp it and say, hey, we cannot use this because you need to have sent it with the post office and you send it to us FedEx. They're going to say, so you sent it with FedEx and it should have been with the post office. Now they're going to send it back to you. And now the whole process has to start over. So we were talking about the fees earlier. Someone has to eat those fees, not to mention the time that's going to take you to get it corrected. Okay. Another common mistake is using out-of-date documents. Again, if someone wants a certified copy of a driver's license and that driver's license is expired, we're not going to certify copy that unless your state says it's okay. But for an apostille, the government, the higher level where it's going, Secretary of State or federal, they may not take an out-of-state expired driver's license. Most places don't. So you have to check these dates on your documents. You cannot assume, well, of course they know their driver's license is good. They wanted me to apostille it. They know that, right? No, you're the professional. You need to go above and beyond. So we are not apostilling normally out of date documents, okay? That would be a passport too. If the passport is expired, we're not going to apostille it. Another common mistake is something called signature witnessing. So you just sign it. I saw the person sign it and that's going to be okay. No, most states require, and if yours is different, that's fine. You don't have to put it in the comments. You don't have to let me know. I'm just giving this videos for everybody. You know, when I teach normally all 50 states. So if your state is different, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I'm just telling you, for on the normal procedure is you cannot just signature witness it. I just signed Kimberly Nunnally and then I'm going to send it for an apostille. No, that's not the process. If the document does not have the proper notarial wording, we're going to add that to the document. If you do not know how to do that, you may need some training. I always say you should be able to notarize a piece of toilet paper. If you watch any of my videos, and if you don't know how to, you might need some training. Again, notaryeducatorsllc.com. Okay. So that being said, though, yeah, don't just signature witness. Don't just sign the document and then send it to your Secretary of State. It's going to be rejected, okay? It needs to have some notarial wording on there. Just for the sake of conversation, I do want to remind you that there are certain documents that are prohibited from being photocopied and apostilled. I'm going to go down the list really quick. That's going to be birth certificates, certificate of citizenship or naturalization, death certificates, documents filed in a court proceeding. That might include some divorce documents, anything with the federal, state income tax forms that also may not be able to be copied and be apostilled. It might need to be an original. And marriage certificates, it must be an original. So I've given you a lot to think about today. I really have. So with all of that being said, you want to make sure that you avoid these common mistakes when people are processing apostilles. I want you to apostille like a pro. This has been Notary Life with Kimmy. Please like, subscribe, and share. Bye.